In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
Man, I hope they got rid of that scented candle in the men's bathroom. Man, that was just gave me a headache for like days and days. Well, Jack Hansen's not here yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and pop in the new song, that Tale of Two Podcasters. I think that's what it was. Here we go.
In a land of tales and rhymes.
Oh yeah.
Two podcasters rose in ancient times.
Oh, you're perfect timing, Jack.
Strong,
she just started.
So
hey, Michael, how you doing?
A legendary team.
I do like your Lord of the Rings vibe that you got going on here.
Sounds like our song's playing.
I see that you got the Lord of the Rings shoes on. You're going to do a river dance for us?
These are my Hobbit shoes.
Yes.
They're actually like a hybrid Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien, Ronald McDonald limited edition Hobbit McDonald. They're size 48.
We are of lore, and I love it when she just comes in here with this little musical breakout. Here, is it coming up?
Yeah, where is that part?
I think it's coming up. Oh, here it is, right here.
It's the one everybody gets their lighters out to.
Yes, break them out, folks.
Go.
So what are you drinking there in the rhinestone-studded Stanley?
This is their special this week. It's called the Wabash Cannonball. I understand that they add a little bit of railroad switch plate lubricant to it, so it gives it a nice, goes down smooth.
Wait till the health district finds out about this joint.
Oh, I think they know.
Well, and I had another question, too. Do you know the difference between a prepper and a survivalist?
That's a good question. This is almost like we're working our way into our sponsor for the week, right? Which is some kind of hardware store where you can buy all this freeze-dried astronaut food and a couple of M18s or whatever they call them, these giant rifles to protect yourself from the zombie apocalypse. A prepper and a survivor?
Survivalist.
Survivalist, okay. I'm guessing, this is just a guess, I don't know. I'm guessing a prepper is kind of the lighter version. It's a survivalist light. A prepper is somebody who's prepared with provisions and, just kind of a little bit if things go sideways. A survivalist is prepared to literally kill the prepper and take their stuff if need be to survive.
That's good. I like it. And one of the AI generated answers that I received was the key difference is between a prepper and a survivalist is it's all in their approach to survival. So preppers are planners, stockpiling resources and preparing for known threats. Survivalists are adapters, honing their skills to survive in any situation, regardless of the specific threat. I would rather be a survivalist than a prepper.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So a prepper is like the guy who cooks dinner, a couple times a week, and the survivalist is somebody who only lives on his wife's cooking,
right,
and just takes his chances constantly.
Yeah, a prepper has the bucket freeze dried food and 800 pounds of batteries in their basement, and a survivalist is a guy who knows how to gut a squirrel 5 days, 5 different ways to Wednesday, and adapt off the land, essentially.
I'm shocked that this exists in the West. I mean, would you really want to try to live through anything that would require you to have all of those provisions and need those skills? Or would you rather just say, look, I think that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, there's a quality of life issue when you're, again, in the West, we sort of have these creature comforts that we do. And so there's a quality of life issue. I mean, I guess if you're living close enough to the Stone Age like they are still in a lot of the world, I mean, remember, not all the world is westernized. They haven't converted over into the mentality of buying everything and being happy with all these shiny possessions like we have. So there's a quality of life issue for us, and I just think it would be so diminished. I don't even know why you'd want to live through it. Like a super volcano or a natural disaster, especially, that would wipe out a few 100 million and then block out the sun so there was nothing growing. I mean, the biggest problem there, of course, isn't, and forgive me for being the pessimist, but the disaster itself is bad enough on the terms of human toll. But the worst thing is what happens to society, what happens to this system that we have. There are no more systems. It's literally just the Wild West everywhere you go. And I don't know that I like humanity's chances given that. Well, and there was a huge bottleneck in the population the last time there was a supervolcano, Toba, that erupted. That's been, many years ago, but an early version of humans were around at that time, and humans almost went extinct when Toba erupted. So we've been there once before. It's just they didn't have a Western farm and ranch to raid of all their supplies when that does happen. So
well, and you touch on an interesting thing there about mankind, and I think that really, for me, the difference is the way that a survivalist looks at mankind versus the way a prepper views mankind. And in many ways, a prepper is somebody who sees humans as the enemy. Preppers are preparing themselves for a zombie apocalypse, the shit hits the fan situation. And their view of humanity is completely different than a survivalist's view, which a survivalist is more along the lines of, okay, you can keep your 800 pounds of batteries and your freeze-dried buckets of food. I'm going to go kill me a squirrel and have lunch.
As long as they're not zombie squirrels.
As long as they're not zombie squirrels. But, I think that it really comes down to the way that we view humanity. And I think that you could probably look at that from, a socio-political angle. I think you could look at that on many levels of our society. How much money would you say annually, if you had to guess, is spent on prepping?
Oh, God, that's got to be easily hundreds of millions of dollar industry.
More.
Year industry.
More.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. We're in the billions. We're into nine figures.
11 billion.
11 billion.
11 billion.
Hey, I mean, and that's the name of the game, though. Sell. Get them to buy. That's all we care about. So as long as we're pitching the right ideas their way, somebody's making money.
And what would you say the average age of a prepper is?
I think it would be surprisingly low. My guess is the average age, I'm going to guess 36.
52.6. So I guess once you turn 52 and you get 6.5 months in, that's when you officially will become a prepper, Chris.
Well, first of all, I got news for you. I'm 50, so when you hit 50, you are a survivalist, no matter what you're friggin' buying every year to prepare for whatever you're preparing for.
No,
we're survivalists from the time we get here, Michael. You know that.
Well, But I guess what I'm saying,
Iron Maiden line: the minute you're born, you're dying.
No, 52.6 is the prepper. The prepper is the guy who is spending on average about $800 a year per prepper that he's going to have in his bunker, I guess. And
yeah, sure. I name it Archie. Always name your bunker Archie too.
And so they are spending $11 billion annually to hedge against the breakdown of society. And that number keeps increasing. They said like by 6% over 15 years ago. So, I mean, that's a significant amount of money. And I would say that if there's anybody in the podcast audience that fancies themselves as an inventor, let me tell you, that's a sector you want to look at. All right, and here's why, Jack. Because if you invent something that everyone's going to have to buy in an $11 billion a year market, and they're going to have to use it at the end of the world when the zombie apocalypse happens, it's a beautiful thing, because if your item doesn't work or they don't like it, who are they going to call?
Yeah, who are they going to send it back to, right?
Exactly.
There's no Amazon Prime.
Exactly.
Well, let me tell you a funny story, or I think it's funny anyway. It's just it's where I'm at with the whole thing, and I'll tell you the story just to tee up my own personal view on the predication of this mindset. So I'm with my ex-wife, my now ex-wife, in Las Vegas, and we're rolling through the city. She's never been there before. I haven't been there in years. Like the last time I was there, the Luxor and the Excalibur were like brand new. They were out at the north end of the strip, of course. So, of course, it's gone absolutely ridiculously wild, like 100 times more turgid than you can imagine since then. It's as bombastic as it's ever been. And it's August, and it's hot as hell. And I hate Las Vegas. I can't stand the vibrations there. They're desperate. The energy's desperate. Everybody's looking to get lucky in one way, shape, or form. I'm not impressed with the glitz. It's run by organized crime. Not that anything that's associated with the IRS or the U.S. government isn't to some degree, but we'll just set that aside. It's literally run by organized crime.
It's
not my place. It's not my bag. Who sent you? Right, exactly. It's not a place for a starseed like me to want to hang out for very long. When I was younger, I enjoyed my visit. But the first time I was there, I was about 23. And at that age, this had to have been about 10, 12 years ago now, I guess. So at 40, 38, pushing 40, I was over it. Well, she'd never been, so she wanted to drive through the downtown. I want to see all the hotels and casinos and things like that. All right, so obviously, it's your wife and you're going to appease her, so you're driving through the downtown. So we're driving through downtown Las Vegas. So she's looking at the strip and watching all the things. And we pull up next to this van, and it's some kind of classic Las Vegas glitzy Hollywood game thing. It's probably a paintball event or some kind of thing that they have going on out in the desert somewhere where people pay $200 a pop and whatnot. But it's this van, and it's painted black. And it's got lettering on it like the Monster Energy drink. It's got that really ridiculous, ultra urban fighter, cage fighter lettering
Slim
shit
Jim
on it. And it
Slim
says,
Jim, yes,
yeah,
sir.
Exactly. You literally look at the thing, and it's just going, oh, yes, it's that kind of. And it says Zombie Apocalypse Response Team. And so I take one look at my wife, and I say, hey, look, check that out. And she looks at it and she goes, oh, yeah. And I said, I got one question for you. Why aren't they responding? We're surrounded by zombies. Look at them, for God's sakes. The zombie apocalypse is here. You've been to Vegas lately. You've been to Disneyland. You've been to Walmart. You've been to like Marshall's, or we have Marshall's and that other one here. What's that? Ross, those places where you get like stuff that, it used to be $68 at the Macy's, and now they've marked it down to $12. That's like a military training exercise. Those women will slaughter you for the right deals, man. I mean, we are living the zombie apocalypse. We are living times when the brainless and the thoughtless and the heartless and soulless, frankly, although I don't believe that, I'm not sure, but I don't think anything doesn't possess a soul. Maybe not. I mean, I'm open to the possibility, but the less, just attach your suffix to it. The less, the brainless, the heartless, the mindless, the thoughtless. We're walking amongst them right now. And it doesn't mean that they're not or couldn't be, decent, upstanding citizens. It doesn't mean that they couldn't be, cosmically righted, I suppose. But my God, we've got a lot of work to do. And so I had some fun with that. I was just like, why they're not responding, I don't know. Well, clearly it was a joke because it's something that they're, like I said, some paintball match or something they're doing down there in the desert. But the zombie apocalypse to me, it's here. The scary thing about the zombie apocalypse phenomenon is, though, Michael, have you seen the stats about the number of people that believe that a literal zombie apocalypse, aside from my remarks, is possible? And I'm talking about, the Dawn of the Dead, the Night of the Living Dead, the Evil Dead, all chain together all your classic zombie movies that the dead can literally be resurrected by some post-mortem chemical means or some comet that passes by. And however these things happen in these movies, these horror movies that they create. And then all of a sudden, the world is running from zombies, which, of course, have gotten a lot faster over the years, too, in cinematic terms, because the original ones took like 48 minutes to get to the door. I'm not sure what's so scary about that. You can come up with a plan to off somebody in 48 minutes from your front porch, I would think. It's going to take them that long to get there from the graveyard. But now zombies are fast. They run quick. And
right. The original ones
and
subscribed.
And so they're adroit. They can climb, and they can actually think, too, to certain degrees. They can problem solve. Anyway, the stat I saw was something on order of about 32%. 32%
wow.
of the population believes that scenario is actually scientifically, here we go back to science again, as much as I like to kind of hold it at bay. Who sent you? I mean,
we might have to add that to the soundboard.
32% of people think that the literal events of, like World War Z are plausible in reality. And so it's no wonder we're spending $11 billion a year on prepper stuff and survivalist things. We believe these things are possible. And so whatever happened to, like, protect thy neighbor? That's what I wonder. Is there any prepping scenario that involves, like, there's a classic episode of The Simpsons where the comet is coming to strike Springfield, and, like, nobody in town has a shelter but Ned Flanders, of course, because, after all, he runs the Leftorium and he's the most prepared man on earth because God is literally at his beck and call constantly. He loves Ned, and why not? Ned pays him enough homage for the right things. So, like, he builds the shelter big enough for both families because Homer goes over and knocks on the door and wants to kick him out. And, of course, Ned's just like, oh, I figured this would happen, so I built the shelter big enough for both of our families. I'm just like, so whatever happened to that mentality? He's the only man that thinks of sheltering his neighbor during a time when we might all be horribly destroyed from some, thing above that's coming from above. But the rest of us are like, nope, it's every man for him damn self. And we're doing that every day anyway, so it doesn't change a thing. It doesn't change a thing. And thank you, God bless the USA, because honestly, that's where a lot of that mentality sprung up from. I know people don't like to hear that, but it's pervasive in our society, in Western society. It's all, look at the system. It's not, you got to take advantage of the market when it's down, kick other people when they're losing money so you can earn more. That's the name of the game. It's wrong. I'm not ever going to stop bashing it in my life. It's wrong. We're all a part of it. We're all cogs in it to one degree or another, and I'm just as guilty of a million sins within that construct as anybody, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't start with cognition, and so I'm at least cognizant of it. I can give myself that. I wish I wasn't sometimes. I really kind of wish I wasn't. It's easier to be ignorant, but anyway, zombie apocalypse response team, there you go. Wherever they are tonight, God bless the great work they're doing in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Nye County.
They act like I have horns and I just came out after this guy. And that's not what occurred at all.
Oh, Pam.
Sure it's not, honey.
Oh, Pam.
It's time to play good cop, bad cop, sweetheart. Who sent you?
Okay, I got to roll this one, too.
So what's the thing about Pam? People are dead. And the story isn't over.
No, it's not.
Sadly, no, I don't think the story is over.
Ned Flanders he's the modern day Noah.
I so admire the writing on that show. I haven't watched it in years, but I know I can't say I grew up with it because I was, in my 20s when it kind of got rolling.
Did.
But I used to watch it with my ex-wife a lot, and boy, the writing on that show was sharp. I know it pissed a lot of people who were devoutly religious off, and people who were in both political camps and all this other thing. I thought it was just really sharp. I thought that they were pointing out some real deficiencies in our nature, in our very makeup, in the modern sense. And basically, in pointing out the satire, they're saying we can do better. This is something we wish didn't need to be the butt of a joke. We can do better than this.
Well, and the beautiful thing about The Simpsons is that it was in its heyday when people still watched television in, congruent time spans, right?
Yeah.
It was before DVR. It was before any of the streaming. And so it was like, oh, the Seahawks aren't, just got over, and now we're launching into The Simpsons. And everybody was still watching the TV. And, it really set the stage for what later became Seth MacFarlane's empire of Family Guy and, South Park and, fill in the blank. But you're right. It took what was a medium that was used to communicate to children and entertain children, and it really delved into the pit of society. And I think, I know that. I got a quick story about The Simpsons. I was a child of the 80s, and of course, The Simpsons became then something where I gained a lot of my pop references. And so as a kid, I maybe didn't know what something meant, but I would roll off these lines from The Simpsons. And I remember vividly telling my teacher that, Ted Kennedy's a drunk. And she said, well, where did you hear that? He's a respectable statesman. I said, well, it was on The Simpsons. And it was the episode where the guy goes, I parked the car in the river and got away with it.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't be the first respectable statesman to have been completely schnockered at every second of his time in office. Hell, Churchill won a war and probably never was able to stand up for more than 22 seconds on his own. I mean, I swear, if you look at some of the old black and white videos of him giving speeches, you can see the two little hobgoblins, the freaking homunculus that they hired to hold him up in the background. That man was as red-faced as W.C. Fields. Like,
most definitely. And one of my favorite Churchill quotes, one of my favorite Churchill quotes is, and I forget who he said it to, but I'm sure it was somebody who was rather notable. And he was drunk at a party, and he said something to the effect of, "Ma'am, I might be drunk now, but tomorrow you'll still be ugly." That was Ritz.
Oh, my goodness. Well, and then Thatcher came along, and did she change that? I don't know. See, you talk about influences, and this is interesting because this is kind of...
Do you have your solar eclipse glasses?
I didn't do the solar eclipse. It wasn't visible here really well. It was only a quarter in our part of the world. So it was about, eclipse ratio was like, I see all these different terms. And there are like proper astronomical terms for the beginning and the middle stages, the apex of an eclipse and then the ending. But I don't remember what those are off the top of my head. All I know is about 24% in our neck of the woods, and it was pretty cloudy when it actually happened. So I think it's cool that people are into it just from a, sort of ancient celestial connectivity reason. But I just wonder how many of them are truly into it and how many of them, again, are truly doing it because the rest of the world seems to be doing it. I mean, to me, we've gone a little bit too far when we're booking, 90-minute flights for $800 on Southwest Airlines or whatever it was from Dallas to, like Tulsa or something like that.
That's when we have too much money.
Yeah, that's when we have too much time on our hands. But it's a time-honored tradition, solar eclipses, and they do bring changes energetically. I think they're markers for change, differences in energy because the celestial bodies going around each other. By the way, here's something for conspiracy theorists everywhere to chew on. Actually, this is probably a better one for debunkers everywhere, for people that say that there's no mystery. Those people that love to siphon the mystery out of our world and love to make like everything is just cold and hard and dire from the beginning. It's a vapid, vacant, hopeless universe that's all about random chance and all of this is just some kind of a mistake. Do you know what the mathematical, we're talking science here, do you know what the mathematical probability of the moon being exactly the size needed and exactly far away enough from the Earth to perfectly eclipse our sun is? Mathematical probability. Do you know what it is?
I think there's an azimuth somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's an easy answer. It's 0. It's not mathematically possible. So just chew on that because that comes straight from science.
Science.
Yeah, science. Who sent you?
Who sent you, science?
Who sent you, science?
What is this science I keep hearing about?
This is a magical kingdom, and I'm not talking Disneyland, which was destroyed by the giant comet several years ago during the eclipse when no one was looking.
And the notorious Kathleen Kennedy.
No, I didn't actually see it. Did you go out and make some kind of a deal out of it or whatever? I don't even have the last big eclipse that happened 2017. I was in Florida for that one. And it was pretty, I don't think it was 100% there, but it was pretty, it covered quite a bit of the sun for a little while. But I was sitting inside a coffee house on my computer, and like all the employees even went outside to look at it. There wasn't even anybody running the till or the store. I think I was like, "You going to sit here, Jack? Okay, just watch the store, will you? We're all going outside." So
you helped yourself to the what is it? The praline syrup.
Yeah, they were completely out of praline syrup. No idea what happened to it either when the day came and went. So anyway, so did you enjoy the eclipse? Were you moved by it? Did you feel a change like afterwards?
No, I didn't. I didn't enjoy it, and I didn't feel the change. The first time around in 2018 or 17, whatever it was, I remember standing up on top of the roof of a radio station that I worked at the time. And one of the news ladies actually had sent in for the magic glass decoder rings. And so we had the glasses on, and it was very interesting to watch as this little bead just started to go across the sun. And you couldn't see it with the naked eye. It would burn your eyes. But it was very interesting to watch just this little marble cross the sun. And it was a very eerie feeling when that happened. And I don't know if it was subconscious. And this time when it happened, I actually was kind of waiting just to kind of see how it felt outside. Because one of the things that her and I noticed was that it almost felt kind of like it was daylight, but then you kind of had that cold, drafty feel.
Yeah.
And even the birds, we noticed, weren't chirping at that time.
Well, they're working on the idea that it's time to roost, that suddenly it's nighttime. So they're sleeping because they're all about circadian rhythms, as are plants. Everybody also, tries to equate the when everything wakes up for spring, when the things start to green up, and they all think that's all about, the warmth. I want to equate it to temperature, and it's about the amount of available light. So it's time-honored tradition in the photosynthetic world that is botany that plants react to how much available light there is, not temperature. Of course, cold will kill them one way or the other, or warmth can dry them out, so they like a certain temperature. But yeah, the light really it's all about the light. I mean, our existence in some ways is all about the light. We wouldn't have one to a large degree if it wasn't for that, or at least it wouldn't be illuminated. We enjoy our warmth from our little star up there.
Absolutely. And, I guess the point was we were far from the point of totality at that time. I think it was like in Madras, Idaho, or Madras, Oregon at that time.
Weiser, Idaho was the big spot to watch it last time.
Weiser. So we were far from it, but we were close enough that I think we still had the effects of it in terms of it was still daylight, but you could it almost had that dusk feel. Yeah. Where the sun is setting, but it wasn't setting. And it was it was almost like your brain couldn't comprehend what you were feeling on your skin and what you were seeing with your eyes. It was interesting.
Yeah, they are strange events. That's why they've been, marked as being so important, I guess, in ancient history. But I mean, they are important events, celestially speaking, because again, they mark beginnings and endings of cycles of things moving around each other in the heavens, and that's a pretty big deal. I think people who completely write it off and don't care, they might need. I mean, I have to work with talk radio, mainstream talk radio on in the background, and although I try my best to ignore it, sometimes it filters in. And I know one of the guys who does a show, it's not my cup of tea, but, I won't say who it is, but he was belly aching about how many people were taking the day off to watch it. Because he was saying, well, it only takes a few minutes, so why should you get the day off? I mean, a caring boss should just let you go outside and watch the thing, and then you get right back to work again. I'm just thinking, well...
Millions of people are going out to watch the sun and the eclipse. That right after these Pfizer commercials. Isn't that the truth?
Then I saw a great meme with these street racers and these kids saying, watching the eclipse, and it was a Mitsubishi that had been all souped up, ready for action on the street racing scene. So everybody's got their deal with the eclipse. It's the last one for a while, and I remember the one, you weren't born yet, but the one before that, I was about 6 years old. It happened in 1979, and my mom spooked me because that was a full eclipse here in our neck of the woods. That one was, it got dark, but she was so afraid, I think, that I was going to stare at the eclipse that I think I hid inside, honestly. So
wow, I was actually surprised.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, it seems like I've been inside for all of the solar eclipses, the full ones that have happened in my lifetime, no matter where I've been. But I've only been here in Washington for 2 of them now, and this one wasn't even close to being full. And the other one I was in Florida for. And, I mean, eclipses happen all the time. That's the other thing. We're so Occidental. We think, the eclipse only happens every 26 years. Well, no, they actually happen constantly all the time, but you have to be in different places around the Earth.
Once a year, right?
But, of course, we don't count those, of course, because here in the West, it's just like, where's that?
I was kind of surprised that you even showed up today, because I was thinking in the back of my mind, well, maybe he went home.
Yeah, it got dark, and I was like, shit, I got to get out of here.
No, I mean, with the aliens. Like maybe
they came to pick me up.
Yeah, they came to pick you up.
Oh, don't do that to me. Don't dangle that carrot, Michael.
You were talking about the ancients, and I was thinking to myself, too, when I was doing some just kind of searching along the various news outlets. Can you imagine back in the day, can you imagine in the Stone Age,
way back in the day,
before they even understood any of this, like that happening, how much of an effect that would have had on, the Aztecs or the Mayans? And it's like, okay, let's get all the virgins together. It's time for a sacrifice.
Well, that shouldn't be too hard to get all the virgins together. They were remarkable events, to put it mildly, in both the Mesoamerican societies and, I mean, all ancient cultures revered the eclipse as being something that, it's a very inaccurate movie in many ways, but it comes to mind anyway, Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, where they're literally just, it's a bloodbath, and they're, as Cortez claims to have seen, so many thousand sacrifices within a 24-hour period. And they were going over this in an historical account that I was watching, some scientific thing. I mean, just to get through the rib cage to pull someone's heart out of their chest. I mean, this is not like, Temple of Doom stuff. You don't just reach in and whoosh, pull it out. I mean, if that were to happen, half the men on Earth would be lacking theirs that were in heterosexual relationships, I think, just from basic fights that go on at home or skirmishes, you know what I mean? So the rib cage is designed to protect the most vital organ in the body, aside from the brain, you could argue. And I mean, you can't just get through it with a flint knife. So historians at least have often wondered what exactly was being used. Now, the ancient alien proponents, they love to think that it was some kind of laser tool, and they're not saying this didn't happen because, after all, if Cortez said it, it must have happened, right? But
oh, absolutely.
Anyway, in that movie, they're using that riff. They're saying basically that there's just one, and they're beheading the people. They're pulling their hearts out, and then they're beheading them and throwing their heads down the steps. And it's very graphic, as Mel Gibson's movies typically are, the Tarantino wannabe that he is as a director. And so the bloodbath is on, and then an eclipse happens, and then they stop because they feel like that is one of the pantheon of their god's way of saying, okay, you can stop now. That's enough blood. I'm going to fix things now. Everything, you can go back. The crops will be okay. It's always about the crops too, so.
It's kind of the equivalent to grandma turning off the lights and saying, all right, it's time to go to bed.
Yeah, a little bit. I always liken it to creatures. I wonder, because think about ants and smaller creatures that are, sort of earthbound. They can't fly. I mean, the sun gets eclipsed, 3,000-4,000 times a day. People walk in front of a dog, a human, a tree. I mean, stuff gets in front of the sun all the time. So they're experiencing all kinds of eclipses where we just have to worry about the ones where the actual satellite orbiting our planet gets in the way. I don't know. It comes to mind. The nano world comes to mind, the micro world.
And, and I also really appreciated that historical significance of the conquistadors coming on shore and the Indians.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just like standing there going, who are these guys? They're walking on water.
Yeah, that was also completely wrong. And so he melded a lot of things together to try and make that movie work. It's actually not a bad flick. Because when do historical facts actually stop becoming historical facts? Because, revisionist history has been around for a lot longer than, the Republican Party being in office. Excuse me for being political for a second. But, they've been interpolating scripture for a long time of one degree or another, or scrolls that give historical accounts to manipulate this, that, or the other. So, I mean, I don't know that we could truly say, even with some kind of seemingly empirical evidence, what exactly happened that long ago. I think there's a lot of speculation. That's why I think the ancient aliens thing is cool, actually, because why not? I mean, I think it's as plausible as anything else. And also, it was so long ago. What are we going to learn from it now? I mean, it's over and done. So.
How are you going to disprove it, right?
Well, yeah. And is proof really necessary? I mean, that's just it. Don't people believe what they want to believe? I mean, I forget who it was. I think it was Imelda Marcos. Her and her husband said, as dictators, that they could make them believe anything, that they could spin the truth about anything. So there was two truths. There was what was actually happening, and then there was the one that they sang, and they could get you to believe that. 3 sides to every story. That's the old line. 3 sides to every story. Yours, mine, and the truth. And does the truth even matter once yours and mine are out there?
Well, and I like to believe that if aliens did come to Earth, then they would see the work in IMDb of Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks essentially playing the history of mankind. Have you noticed that lately? Yeah. In all of his movies, it literally is like the history of us starring Tom Hanks.
That's actually a great question we should throw out there right now. We didn't have any time to prepare for this, so this is completely off the cuff, as is just about everything we do. So
no way.
What does it matter?
No way.
But you wonder about, again, this is assuming that extraterrestrial visitation has not already happened, which, give me a break. I mean, you could count the ways. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, I think we may actually be the ETs. I'm not sure which version of the truth is there. All I know is that it's a vast universe, and I'm sure that we have either been discovered long since, or we have some connection to those discoverers, those explorers, that we may as well just be them. But assuming that we're autonomous in our, anthropocentric ways down here, that we're doing our human game, and then all of a sudden it's that old White House lawn thing, or they land somewhere. If they do land, and maybe we're not around to shepherd them through the best and worst times in our own history to kind of catch them up on where we're at, they could figure out where we need a little help. What movie comes to mind? What's the one movie that you'd want E.T. to see if he came down and just found it? Lands in a deserted Bend, Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm. Where
the last blockbuster video on the planet is. And, it's just like, well, they're looking for relics, anything that they could tell us about this civilization that seems to have been destroyed or they've heard about, that was all about crazy things and partying constantly and killing each other, and they're intrigued and they come here, but we're long since gone. But they find one VHS tape or one DVD that they have an easy time, just scanning with their little alien gray minds and playing. What's the one movie you want them to see if they're going to find one that would summarize humanity? Or they wouldn't even have to do that. It's just, what movie would you want them to see if there could only be one? And it doesn't have to be your favorite movie. It can just be like, what do you want them to see?
That's a good question. That is a really good question. But I think it would have to star Tom Hanks.
I know. It's hard, isn't it? Yeah. Or Nicolas Cage.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking.
Nicolas
right?
Cage. Nicolas Cage.
One of the National Treasure films.
I would have to say maybe the original Roadhouse. Maybe the original Roadhouse. I think that.
Well, yeah, that comes up again.
That probably summarizes all of humanity right there.
That pretty much encapsulates everything from 81 to 89.
Yeah,
quite nicely. But yeah, that's not a bad selection. They could pick worse. I mean, they could find worse, I guess they could say. So,
oh, brother,
yeah, that is a tough question, though. I like it. I don't know. This is getting into territory. I guess it's getting into a little bit of territory with where does, we go back to intelligence. We were talking about artificial intelligence last week. So where does intelligence come from? And I can't believe that I failed to, in our last time together, mention what I believe are the three cornerstones of intelligence. And, teachers and scientists and scholars may say, oh, Jack Hansen's really behind the times if you think he's the one coming up with this. I mean, so this may be quite literal to a lot of people, but I feel like this was an epiphany for me one day.
Lay it on us.
It came because of me getting older and me not being able to remember things as well. But that's not it. So I got to thinking about, well, how does that process work, Jack? Because I'm a real wordsmith and I like to add new words to my vernacular. And when I'm exposed to them, that, like you just said about, you didn't know who Ted Kennedy was until you watched it on The Simpsons. And so it's like me, I don't know some words until I'm exposed to them in a movie or in a book,
right?
Or, a newspaper article or whatever it might be. And so I just instantly was like, well, those are the three compartments of intelligence, Jack. It's easy: exposure, retention, and recall. And you're having an issue with the third. You're having an issue with recall because you're exposing yourself to plenty of new information. And you're certainly able to retain it still because in the moment or for a few days, man, I'm using that word like 18 times, it's stuck. Yeah. But then after a while, if I don't have a reason to use it, then the recall, it's there, but like it's slower now. So we go back to compartment one, which is exposure. That's where people essentially are getting their knowledge about anything. And even though AI may be challenging the world of what is knowledge, and that's turning it on its head in itself. Still, the general concept of, okay, this did happen in 1492, and this did happen in 1776, and this did happen last Wednesday, and this will happen next weekend. I mean, those kinds of things as it relates to events or facts scientifically, or, even just theories, I suppose, that are thrown out there, philosophies. You have to be exposed to them in order to have some kind of ability to want to retain them and then recall them. So people's level of exposure seems to be one of the big problems because, they're only looking to a few sources to get whatever information that they might be exposed to. And, this is the problem. And this I love because this is the problem for the world's governments. This is the problem for, I don't want to paint a nefarious construct, but every government, regardless of what its modality might be, has an inherent responsibility to control its people. It's got to keep them under control because a lot of people creating a problem is a problem. Just ask the French, just ask any country that's Argentina, Bolivia, ask any country that's been through a coup or revolution, what that's like. So I can see why there's a concern there about, look, we need to control the stream of information and narrow this down to one pathway. Like, we've got to give them an official narrative, and that's the only one. The problem is, of course, is that it's completely designed to control the masses, and so therefore it's bullshit. It's not true. At least some part of it's probably not true because it's specifically synthesized in order to get people to do what they want them to do so they can continue to be under the grasp of whoever's running the show. And I'm not even sure that I'd love to think there's this grand conspiracy, these weird people in masks and everything, this Illuminati running the world. I don't know that there is, Michael. I think it might just be complete chaos at the top. But whoever might be sitting in the throne at the time, wherever it is located, that's always been the idea. But the problem is that when you tell me that I have the right to free speech and I have the right to say what I want. And then you say, no, you don't, because it's just too dangerous right now. I mean, that's what happened during the pandemic, is everybody that was a naysayer about the pandemic was suddenly just shut down. They had a reason to kick you off of YouTube. I mean, there were, we'll just, I guess we'll call them entertainers for lack of a better, word. There were people, contributors, influencers, I guess is the big modern word for them, who I'd been watching and following on that platform for a decade or more, that were gone overnight. They were just chopped because they had a right to say that they didn't believe that this was going on, and it was instantly revoked from them because they said it's just too dangerous right now. It's just unsafe for you to have this God-given right to promulgate the fact that you don't believe that this virus is even out there at all, or maybe as virulent as we're saying it is, or that, so you're not allowed to say that because it's just too dangerous. Hey, what's up? I got a problem with that. I have a problem with that. So I know we're kind of straying off into deep territory, but that's what the design of the show is in some ways. Like,
I'm with you. And I really do think that, we give those people in the shadows, I think, way too much credit. I really do. And I think on the other side of the coin, I think that the people who are out here in society, like you and I, aren't given enough credit. And so, on one side, we're saying that there's somebody pulling the strings and the Illuminati, controlling everything, when in reality, I think if we really knew the answers, we'd probably be sadly disappointed. And half of the conspiracy theories that roam the interwebs probably wouldn't exist. And I also think that on the same side, we always do this with new technology. There's always this nightly news headline package of AI, friend or foe. We did the same thing with marijuana.
Well, it just seemed a little too convenient to me that's my theory on this anyway. I'll just put it right out there. Without getting into the whole reality of the pandemic and was it as bad as they said, and did they make up things? I don't know. How could I possibly know that? It's one of the reasons I don't prefer conspiracy theory rabbit holes too much. I don't want to go down them too far because you can't know these things. I can't be the fly on the wall at some secret meeting or in some government laboratory where these things happen. I can't be the fly that flies into Area 51 or into Dulce, the underground base they say is in Dulce, New Mexico, where they had a firefight with aliens. And, I can't get into those places. I can't tell you whether it's true or not. And I'm not going to put my life, on the line, as it appears to have been done by some people who investigated that shit and wound up dead or wound up having their lives ruined. If that doesn't tell you that there's somebody that doesn't have a secret somewhere that they don't want to protect. But all that aside, my theory on it is that it was just very convenient. It was just like, look, we have an opportunity to really get a leg up on squelching some of the people that are saying things that undermine our responses to things, that undermine our ability to control them. Mm-hmm. And we're going to wipe them out. We're going to nuke those fuckers right now because we have this global emergency that's just scary enough. It's killing just enough people. It's sickening just enough people to warrant a cautious response by the general population of every corner of the globe. But we've got, a way to be able, so we've been given the clout here to be able to say, no, exactly what they said. This is just too dangerous. We can no longer let David Icke. We could no longer let, I could name off several of them. We could no longer let these men and women say what they want to say and what their theories and philosophies and beliefs are on it, because we control the official narrative now because we're going to say it's just too dangerous. And that's exactly what happened. And I think it was a happy accident, personally. I think they looked at this and said, this is a perfect time to take better control, firmer grip on, because they also, I know this, they also changed the rules of that game afterwards, because influencers at that time, prior to the pandemic, were able to go online and they were able to say what they wanted to say, and YouTube would pay them for whatever number of hits they got, just the same as they would somebody that's crocheting on the next channel. So the crocheting channel made just as much as, then they changed the rules and it wasn't that easy anymore. And they also began flagging your content. I mean, you still to this day cannot post, and I know because I work in the journalism business and I post things about the pandemic still and about, COVID. You can't post the letters COVID on Facebook without getting it flagged with some message underneath from the government about where to obtain more information about COVID. They are directing you to the official narrative and away from whatever it is that you've just written, even when what I write as a journalist being paid by a company is from the mainstream narrative.
Well, and let's remember, too, how much misinformation, there's another buzzword for you, misinformation was being shared with the general public. And also that information just, that was just kind of reckless, whether it's, children being murdered in a basement of a pizzeria in Hoboken, New Jersey, or wherever that was, Washington, D.C., and people's lives were ruined because their business was targeted by these QAnon conspiracy theory nuts. And I think maybe I just wrote down anatomy of a conspiracy theory. I think that needs to be one of our future topics.
Well, I think the anatomy is anything that happens pretty much at all. I mean, I think anything that you're shown that happens in the world, because there's a cleanup process that instantly begins. You see that thing that happened a couple months ago? Again, thanks to my girlfriend for showing me this on TikTok, because I wouldn't have known about it. But the thing at the mall in Florida, like at Miami.
Yes.
With the things that, like, the people in the mall were supposed to have seen, these shadow creatures.
I saw that.
And they were large entities. And, I mean, they had every cop in Dade County there. I mean, and they, of course, said, well, it's a couple of kids who had an AK or robbed a store, they were in pursuit of. They don't send that many cops, forgive like a donut joke if I can think of one off the top of my head, but, they don't send that many cops to a robbery at Krispy Kreme at 3 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. I mean, that response was titanic for what they said that they were doing there. So there's your anatomy. The anatomy is that very spark that is really in all of us that says something about this doesn't make sense. And yes, I know there are the truly paranoid who rock among us and therefore probably should be excluded from this equation to a degree. They have a right to their opinion, but it's with an asterisk because they get upset when their papers turn the wrong way on their doorstep. What is a newspaper anymore, Jack? Geez. But, they get weird about when the O on the Cheerios box is printed slightly to the left as the last one that they bought. I'm talking about just general intelligence. Again, exposure, retention, recall. You've been exposed to enough things in your life at age 40, Michael, me at 50, and most people really by probably a tender enough age, even teenage years, dare I say, to be able to forward, okay, this is what's typical or common in this circumstance. Because I've been exposed to it or seen it enough times happen, even if I wasn't there.
The bullshit
and I've
filter.
And I've retained what happened, and now I'm regurgitating what happened. And something about this doesn't quite wash.
Yeah.
Something about this isn't right. So, and conspiracy theory, the term itself was invented by the Central Intelligence Agency in the 1960s as a way to attach things that would make any theories that were other than the official narrative that was spun look ridiculous. It would make them sound nonsensical. It would make the people behind them sound crazy, lunatic fringe, just wacko nuts, forget about them. Now we go back to the UFO phenomenon with a lot of the credible reports that were investigated, the high strangeness by J. Allen Hynek and those people that were in Operation Blue Book from the very beginning. And the guys specifically hired, go out and even the good ones, trash them, make these people look silly.
Yeah.
And he himself actually was a believer by the end of this project, actually by not very long into the project, because there were some things happening here on planet Earth that were inexplicable to large measures. I mean, he had no clue what this wasn't, but rather than share that information and explore that intrigue with the world, they don't do that. They just say, well, we're going to throw it all in a pot and cook it up, and we're coming out with nothing stew for the world. So you have to think somebody somewhere is pulling strings. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And certainly the experiencers would tell you that. What they told me this was doesn't make sense. I know because I was there. I saw it. I experienced it. Even Close Encounters of the Third and Fourth Kind that happened with people. They're trying to say, no, you saw Venus or you took too much cold medicine. And basically we know. And people would say, Venus is not even like in the same spot right now because I watch it or I know, and I don't have a cold. Anyway, I'm just saying that, conspiracy theories, the anatomy of them, I think, Michael, goes back to anything that you're shown en masse for the masses, anything that's shown to you by the mass media, or certainly that filtrates from some government agency anywhere, take it with 2, 3, maybe even 8, 10 grains of salt, because if it doesn't make sense based on some of the other narratives that are coming out, based on some of the information that's out there, I think you've got one. I think you have every reason to feel like there's something conspiratorial afoot, at least to say that we don't want to create panic. We don't want to expose people to knowledge. We don't want to have to explain ourselves because if we expose this, then we have to explain last Sunday and last year and 1967, right. And we don't want to go back and do that. So,
yeah. Well, I do think that we're going to need to dig a little deeper into that topic, just because, about a month ago, and this is timely, a month ago, a month and a day, actually, March 8th, 2024, the Department of Defense released a statement discounting the sightings of extraterrestrial technology. Now, this is after the Tic Tac video. This is after the disclosure to Congress that you just discussed about the black op budgets that the United States government has fully disclosed. Yeah, we had them. And we were looking into this technology. Now, all of a sudden, the Department of Defense comes out and says, yeah, you didn't see what you thought you saw.
Yeah, but they've ping-ponged back and forth with their stories on all fronts so often. Just look at the Roswell incident alone. I mean, first it's a weather balloon, then it's a secret weather balloon, then it's a double secret weather balloon, then it's a triple secret weather balloon on double secret probation. Right. It's ridiculous. I mean, so I think they've spun so many lies that they're having a hard time keeping up with them. And, eventually maybe the truth does win out. Maybe that's a universal law, is that eventually the truth, just for whatever reason, comes full circle and it does win out. It just takes a while for it to come back around again. Because, again, personally, and again, this is my belief, if they're getting to the point where they're showing you Tic Tacs that can move at 9,000 miles an hour, without a picture of Susan Anton on it, God love the Tic Tac campaign from the 80s, who remembers that? I mean, if they're showing you anything and basically saying, okay, you got us, here it is, what's up? Now my hackles are really,
well,
now I'm wondering what really is afoot.
That's why I'm saying it's very interesting that the Department of Defense would come and swing the pendulum the other way, because, in a way, I feel like that's what you were talking about with the Roswell situation. And we were starting to kind of see some kind of transparency with some of these reports that were coming out and these eyewitness accounts of Navy fighter pilots seeing these things happen. Not only them seeing them, but them being captured on frickin' video. I mean, and so now you've got, and so there was this kind of like tide that was starting to shift. And, and you could probably look at the alphabet soup of U.S. agencies and say, well, the Department of Defense wasn't even involved in those hearings. Therefore, the Department of Defense can issue any kind of statement that the Department of Defense wants to issue. And the Department of Defense wants to go back and swing the pendulum back into the 1960s again, when everybody just said, oh, yeah, okay, that's what it was.
Well, you have the ultimate excuse to lie that's been given to you. You have two words: national security.
Yeah.
And when you have the blanket of national security, again, and we, not to go back to the pandemic, but again, same idea. Listen, it's just too dangerous for us to expose this information, so we're not going to. But who says that?
Yeah.
Who makes that decision? How many people have the ink at their disposal in that pen to make that choice? And at the end of the day, who is really making that choice?
Yeah.
Is it the colonels and generals and joint chiefs of staff members that are actually saying, no, we can't release this because it legitimately could be a threat to national security, your right to go to the mall and shop this weekend, or my right to get on an airplane and fly somewhere and shop all over Disney World or wherever, because that's what our whole society is premised on, is walking around spending money to get a bigger this and a better that and a shinier this. And that's the absolute truth, and you all know it. So don't even try to lie to me about that, because it won't work. So that's what they're defending. They're defending your right to gobble up natural resources at an incredible clip so that you can be comfortable and be put to sleep, so that you can get through this experience saying, I have this and have that and have this. And thank God national security is at the forefront of what everybody that's running this place is, so I can protect all my stuff, so I don't have to be a survivalist or a prepper. They're going to protect me, right? So big problem for us when you can just throw a blanket or a black cloth on anything. You can throw a sackcloth on anything you want and say, nope, you can't see this because national security. Same deal with the pandemic. Nope, you can't say this because national safety, public safety, too dangerous, too risky. Not good. Got to figure out a way to fix that, because the squelch button is already, like on War Games, Major Lamb, lockout changes, we're there.
Yeah.
Like that was, speaking of that part in that movie.
Yeah.
That had to have been, to me, that was the summary of the insanity. That it's a great movie, and because we don't live in Cold War times anymore, but nuclear weapons are still all over the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't build those things. You don't build those things not to use them. You build bombs so they go off. You build bombs to drop on people. So the whole Cold War pissing contest about let's build as many nukes and then more nukes and then more, so they can just sit around and they look good, coming at you in the garage or at the parade at Red Square. You design those things to drop on people and destroy cities and kill babies and women and children. That's what you do with those things. So they're destined to go off. They're bound to go off. So that movie's great because it encapsulates the insanity of the Cold War in the 1980s quite well. And Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy do a great job in it, as actors. But that part at the end where they're convinced that the United States is being attacked by the Soviet Union and they're ready to go into global thermonuclear war with them full-fledged. And they enter, the codes, the initial codes to launch the missiles. They do the whole, they love their games. It's, again, war games. It's perfect. So they love their games. And so they've entered them in. And then General Behringer, I don't remember the actor's name who plays him, but he's the heavyset Texan kind of sounding guy. He says, Major Lamb, lockout changes. And that's it. So there's no going back. There's no going back. And then, of course, that predicates the ending scene where they have to essentially win the race with the artificially intelligent program that's created by Falcon before the nukes go off. And, it's Hollywood drama at its highest form. I don't know if that's the system that they actually use at Strategic Commands at NORAD, but it wouldn't surprise me. It literally wouldn't surprise me if we had there's no going back on this button now.
Oh, totally.
I thought the no going back on it was once the missiles were flying, but I guess not. Anyway, that's a lot in one very big nutshell, I guess, to devour. But I would rather have my freedom to express my opinions on things, my thoughts, my theories on things, more than just about anything that I can think of, quite frankly. So when you start taking away that very fundamental right because you tell me, no, Jack, you can't say that. And I wouldn't be surprised about this very podcast if it wasn't flagged, or if maybe, I don't know what happens, but somebody somewhere might hear this and say, no, Jack, you can't say that because it's just too dangerous. Do you understand?
Yeah, we're doing it for your own good, Jack. Just don't look behind that curtain over there. You see that man? Don't pay attention to that man. He's not there.
Look away from the curtain.
Look away from the curtain.
Definitely not there.
He's not there anymore. Nope, that's not him.
And when you go to sleep tonight, you won't even think about that curtain. Don't even dream about that curtain. We'll know. We have a way to monitor your dreams.
Yeah, we do.
We do it with breakfast cereals. We've been doing it for years. Lucky Charms.
It sounds like Ned Flanders all over again, doesn't it? You know, Jack, I figured this was going to happen. No, it all comes down to a Texan. It all comes down to a Texan and NORAD, don't it?
It's going to come down to somebody if that happens, because somebody has to actually hit the button. You know what I mean? And they were pissed, of course, that somebody had, they had an abstention in the silos. That's, the whole movie is based on the opening scene, which actually has that fella, I forget his name, but he's in that scene. He's from Thelma and Louise.
With the two keys.
In that scene. With the two keys. Yep, you got it. And turn your key, sir. That whole, so the whole movie is based on, we need to set up AI. We need to put this in the hands of a computer, because a computer lacks the ability to have empathy for blowing up 20 million people. Like the guy says, he says, I want somebody on the goddamn phone before I blow up 20 million people. Yeah, I would like to think so. And the problem that the Joint Chiefs and that all the big bosses back at NORAD were having was, we can't have these men thinking for themselves and for the rest. We do that. That's our job. We think for the general safety of the United States. And if we decide to go to nuclear war because we think it's in their best interest, then by God, we're doing it. And no little Lilliputian, drone in a silo somewhere that has the little brass key is going to stop that. So, and as much as we're talking about big things that go boom that are sitting in silos, don't think that words and information and thoughts and ideas aren't equally powerful, if not trillions of times more powerful. They know that they are. See, they know that they are. And, that's the problem. That's the problem, is because that's truly the power that all human beings have, is the ability to say, hey, this isn't right. We don't like this. Or maybe we used to like it, but we don't anymore. We want to change this. But the factions that are in power say, no, you don't. That ruins my day if you start doing that. So we're going to put the screws to you now, and you're not able to talk about this anymore, or we'll flag you. And social media is rampant. They've taken it over.
Here, Jack. Here.
Have you seen the list of words you can't use on TikTok? I don't even use TikTok. My girlfriend, we're watching this video, and it's some guy who creates these cartoon, I guess they're AI things, they're animations.
Wait, is that kind of like that show You Can't Say That on Television, where the slime comes down on your head?
It should be. There's this thing, though, we're watching, and it's like on the Jersey Devil, let's say. It was something more obscure than that, but just for the sake of argument, it's some urban legend that is going to come out. It's a boogeyman that's going to come out of the shadows and get you. And he's done it with this animation so that each of these things is telling its own story about what it's going to do to you and its origins. And, it's kind of nifty if you're into that sort of thing, I guess. But it kept saying a word that I'd never heard before, and I had to check with her and say, what the hell is he talking about? Because it kept saying, they'd come out, these creatures would come out and say, I will come out of the bushes and unalive you when you're least expecting it. I'm going, unalive? What the hell is that? Unalived? And she said, you can't say kill. Yeah. You can't say kill. You can't say dead. You can't, or you'll literally get pushed off of TikTok. You won't be able to even use the frickin' thing.
You know what that is, though? Unalive.
I don't want anything.
You know what that is? I don't want
anything to do with TikTok.
What's
unalive?
You know what that is. So, quick story, and then we got to jump into our final song. But I actually was a narrator once, and this is during COVID. I was a narrator of some Amazon audiobooks. They're actually published still to this day. And
I remember that, yeah.
And I worked with this Italian publishing company. They were self-help books on how to discover your inner voice. Next time on the show. It was very interesting. But it sounds to me like a lot of these videos that I see my kids watching that are generated by English as second language producers unalive.
Well, that's an interesting thought, and I wish that were the case. That maybe that's the origin of the word. But the truth of the matter is you can't say or write or even display the word kill or killed or
Interesting.
kills or dead, because they will boot you from the platform. And that is only one of a litany of words.
So
that
we
you are
should
not
scrub it from
allowed
this
to use.
episode because we're going to get flagged, is what you're saying.
No, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Fuck TikTok. You're not going to start going through my dictionary and scrubbing out words because, again, we just can't have you saying that. And of course, nobody's really doing this. It's the bots that they send through the system. They're just doing this summarily because it's limiting liability is what it is. They're a big company, and Chinese are not. They don't want to get their ass sued off if somebody is talking about stalking and killing somebody for weeks at a time, and they'll say, why won't you do anything? And they'll just say, well, forget it. So we just will eliminate the ability to even do that by eliminating the word kill, killed, kills, all of it from the vernacular of the platform. You can't even use it if you want to be on there.
But yet,
that is insane. That is insane.
You know what's even more insane, Jack? This is the same company that supposedly is spying on us from afar. But you can't say kill on the TikToks.
And you know what the big reason, if that whole thing is even true, I mean, the whole point of why we don't want the Chinese spying on us is because they might be able to sell us even more than they already do, because it's a big competition about who's selling the most.
Charge it.
And now that the dollar store is the $7 store or the $9 store, I mean, it went up to the $1.25 store for a while, and then all of a sudden they just said to hell with it. I mean, inflation ruined the dollar store. And really, in some ways, thank God, because that's a heap of Chinese plastic and petrochemical products that's just polluting the earth and being, I mean, nothing that should cost more than $1 that comes out of the Dollar Tree is it's not even good for one use. I bought, God forbid, and there's probably like a sector of at least like marginal purgatory that I will go through on my way to the next life, or whatever static reality that I enter once I leave this body, I'll get, terrorized for about 10 minutes by some demon entity with this dollar store plunger that I bought, because it didn't even work once. I mean, I literally took like the handle off of the plunger end and just like stir things around in the toilet if I want to get them moving now. That's how effective this fucking thing was.
See, that's what I'm telling you. If you invent something for the zombie apocalypse and the zombies show up, nobody's going to be able to sue you, because guess what? The warranty is null and void. And the other thing is, Jack, the other thing to leave you on this episode is when they print the money, they get to write the rules.
That's so very true. And boy, do they print the money, as long as that's the deal.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts in this go around, and don't be surprised if we don't revisit many of them time and again, because they're important parts. I mean, again, you may not agree. You may think that I'm a nut. You may say, well, Jack, you're crazy to believe all that extraterrestrial stuff and this, that, and the other. Look, that's great. That's fine. You need to form your own opinion, but I want you to form your own opinion based on, whatever evidence that you collect, and just don't rely on the official narrative. And if anybody says you can't say something because it's just too dangerous, you just can't say something at all because we don't want you to, that's not the way to live. I mean, if the founding fathers, God bless them, the slave-owning bunch that they were, really had at least that bit of benevolence in mind for us, if they really didn't just want to break away and be rich kings on their own, away from this big king, again, that happened a long time ago. Who in the hell knows what kind of a guy George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin really was? I don't know. All I know is that free speech was a big deal because they'd been oppressed and suppressed for a long time where they came from. And so it would make sense to me that, we want to go someplace where we'd be able to actually have some liberties with that particular segment of life. So if you're a big founding fathers person, then there you go. There's that on a platter for you too.
And that is why Jack and I subscribe to the George Carlin School of Thought.
Well, It looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own Existence Brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.